Story 1. Would you like to feed the birds? I had always loved this one cemetery ever since I was a little girl. Not only were the grounds beautiful, but the cemetery itself was absolutely massive. I always imagined it as a fantasy world or a gateway to a totally different dimension where the souls of the departed could spend their time before moving on to the next life. The one thing that I loved most, however, were the birds. Back then, my father and I would go there to bird watch from time to time just to catch a glimpse of the birds in this gorgeous habitat. I even had my own set of binoculars with the name Evelyn taped to them. Why are there always so many birds here, Daddy? I remember asking. Well, Evie, my father answered, it's because of all the trees. I know this wasn't the real reason, but I'm sure my father figured this would be enough to satisfy an 8-year-old. Is that it? I asked, and convinced. My father laughed and stopped to think. Actually, there might be another reason, he said with a smile. There is a man that lives here called the groundskeeper. It's his job to make sure the cemetery looks nice for everyone that comes to visit, including the birds. This answer made my imagination start to run wild. I would come up with little stories of how the groundskeeper, a man I never met, would go about his day. I pictured an old man strolling through the cemetery with a shining smile, watering flowers and feeding the birds. As I got older, I began to spend less time at the cemetery, and my stories about the groundskeeper were pushed to the back of my mind. This was, of course, until the day I actually saw him. It was 2 days after my 13th birthday, and my parents were driving me to school. We stopped at a red light right in front of the cemetery, and I proceeded to look out the window. I smiled, remembering the days I spent there when I was little. My smile quickly faded when I noticed a man sitting under one of the trees. His shaggy gray hair covered his face, and he was wearing a very dirty-looking pea coat. As the car began to move again, I looked out the back window to see if I could make out anything else before he was out of sight. Nothing. I was about to turn away, and something caught my attention. I jerked my head back, and saw a flock of birds gather at this man's feet. Hey, who's that in the cemetery? I asked my parents. My father was driving, so he told my mother to take a look. My mother turned her head to look out the passenger's side window, but it was too late. I didn't see them, sweetie. My mom replied that the cemetery is closed right now. Evie, there shouldn't be anyone in there. It's probably the groundskeeper, my father said. I'm sure he's just getting ready to open up soon. I didn't say anything. I hadn't thought about the groundskeeper in years, but I did remember how I envisioned him. This person was nothing like what I had imagined. My grandfather died from a heart attack about a month after I graduated from college. He never had any health issues, and even the doctors found it to be a freak occurrence. However, these things can happen, and my grandfather was able to live his life to the fullest. Even at the age of 90, only a few close friends and family came to his funeral. My grandfather never liked large crowds, so we actually found this to be appropriate. We arrived at the cemetery at about 4 p.m. that day. It was a beautiful fall afternoon, sunny and not too chilly. I stood next to my parents, holding their hands as we listened to the priest. As he spoke, my eyes started to wander. I was taking in the fall colors when I noted a dark figure sitting on a bench under a tree only a couple of yards away. It looked like a man, but I couldn't tell, and my eyes remained fixed on him through the service. When it was light time for us to leave, the man was still there. "Dad," I whispered, turning to my father, "do we know that guy?" My dad looked over to the man sitting under the tree. A couple of birds flew in and landed at the man's feet. "I don't know him," my dad answered. "He's probably just another visitor, or someone that works here." "Like the groundskeeper?" I asked. My dad looked at me, a little surprised. "I guess he could be," my dad said, looking back up at the man. "Looks like he's got a way with birds." I looked back over to the man. There were now well over a dozen birds surrounding him. Some were perched in the tree, some stood at his feet, and some even sat next to him on the bench. Out of pure curiosity, I decided to go over and speak with the stranger. Since my family was close by, I wasn't worried about anything bad happening. "Excuse me," I said as I approached the man. "You work here?" The man looked up at me. He was wearing a dark pea coat and had messy silver hair. He was young, probably in his mid to late 20s, but his complexion was off. His skin was a ghostly white, and it looked like he hadn't slept in days. "I do," he said. His voice was deep and not at all what I was expecting. At that moment, an eerie silence fell over us. The birds had stopped chirping, and even the slight breeze had seemed to disappear completely. "Oh, okay. I was just curious," I replied, trying my best not to sound uncomfortable. "Well, nice to meet you. Have a good day." I turned around and started walking back towards my family. I could feel several sets of eyes on me as I walked back, quickening my pace. This man frightened me, but I didn't know why. I've been around sick people before, some that looked a lot worse than he did, and I never had a problem with any of them. I've also never been afraid of birds or any animals for that matter. Even still, at that moment I could feel what I can only describe as a sense of impending doom. A few days later, I headed over to my grandfather's house to pick up a few of his belongings. All of the items that were packed away in boxes would be temporarily housed at my apartment while my family figured out what to do with them. After I loaded the last box into my car, I decided to do a final sweep of the house to make sure I didn't miss anything. I looked through the kitchen cabinets and on every shelf in the living room, but couldn't find anything. My family was always very thorough when it came to cleaning, so I really wasn't that surprised. My last stop was the bedroom. I went through the closet and all of the drawers and came to the conclusion that this room was empty as well. I was about to leave when a thought crossed my mind. The bed. I knelt down and lifted up the old duvet cover. The light from the window reflected off of a small object that was pushed up against the wall. I reached under the bed and pulled out a small journal. "There's no way I'm leaving this behind," I said to myself. I helped the small leather-bound book closed and left the house. That night I had a strange dream. I dreamt that I was a little kid again, and I was running through the cemetery. I remember sitting under a tree, humming a tune and watching the branches sway in the wind. Suddenly, the blue sky grew cloudy as the wind began to pick up. The leaves on the trees turned brown and fell off the branches. When the last of the leaves had gone, I heard a deep voice behind me. "It's a lovely day, isn't it, Evelyn?" I turned around and saw a man with shaggy gray hair and a dirty pea coat. The man never looked at me, but instead fixed his eyes on a flock of birds headed in our direction. In my dream, I knew who this man was. You're the groundskeeper, aren't you? I said calmly. The man nodded, his gaze still held by the flock of birds that was now at our feet. I am, he replied. He knelt down beside me and handed me a small paper bag. Would you like to feed the birds? I woke up. I wasn't sure if the dream had scared me or not, but it definitely left me feeling uncomfortable. I turned on my light, sat up, and stared at the corner of my room. The boxes from my grandfather's house were all neatly stacked next to my dresser, with the journal I had found laid perfectly on top. I got out of bed, walked over to the stack of boxes, and picked up the journal. To this day, I'm not sure what made me want to read what was inside. Perhaps the dream had sparked my imagination and curiosity. Either way, I opened the small book and began reading. There really wasn't a lot in it. It was mainly small sketches of plants, birds, and some text to go along with them. My son is taking Evelyn to the cemetery again today. It warms my heart to know how much she loves that place. This brought a tear to my eye. I was always close with my grandfather and almost forgot that he used to be an avid bird watcher himself. I turned the page and something fell to the ground. I picked it up and noticed it was an old Polaroid photo of me, my dad, and my grandfather. Upon examining it closer, however, I noticed another figure in the background. Holding the Polaroid in one hand, I read what my grandfather had wrote on the next page. A beautiful day. A shame we didn't notice the young man sitting back there. I turned the page. I had a talk with the groundskeeper today. I think that guy likes birds even more than I do. I started to feel uneasy. This sounded a lot like the man I met the other day. I turned the page again, only this time it was blank. I kept turning until I stopped at a page covered with text. I saw the man again tonight. This time he was outside my bedroom window before he disappeared. There's no doubt about it anymore. It's him. I started to get frightened. My grandfather had never mentioned anything about seeing pay. Opal, why would he keep something like this from us? I continued reading. It's clear to me now. He won't leave me alone until I give myself up. I'm opening the window. Lines be food for the birds soon. I closed the journal. I had no idea what I just read, nor did I want to. I placed the journal on my nightstand and called my parents. A few weeks passed after I showed the journal to my parents. They thought it was odd and said that they would look into things, but told me not to worry too much about it. That was easier said than done, but I tried my best. Since I didn't have a job lined up, I had been actively searching for something since my college graduation. One morning I decided to check some of the local job postings to see if there was anything new. I pulled up the website on my phone and began scrolling through. Suddenly, one caught my eye. It was an assistant groundskeeper position at the cemetery. There was nothing written other than apply in person. It didn't pay very much, but it was enough that would allow me to keep my apartment and pay my bills. On top of that, I would be able to hang around in the cemetery I had loved since I was a kid. But most appealing of all was the fact that I would likely be working with that strange man, the groundskeeper, the one I believed my grandfather wrote about. I could have let this go but I felt as though I needed answers. I followed the instructions and applied the following week. Today is my first day story to cinema. Fleur Breckenridge School is closing this October. It was with heavy hearts that the faculty of our elite establishment announced the permanent closing of our beloved Fleur Breckenridge Academy. Over the last 2 years, we have been fighting to keep our show OLS name from being dragged through the dirt. However, only so much could be done once our reputation was tarnished by one word: murder. Fleur Breckenridge was once highly regarded as one of the most elite schools in the entire country. It boasted an exceptional education with a rigorous curriculum and was made famous by a student body consisting of the sons and daughters of high society. After the events that took place in September of 2014, Breckenridge began seeing a decrease in incoming students. After this last year's incoming class, it became clear that our illustrious academy would not be able to keep filling seats for the future. On September 22, 2014, sophomore Ivy Litton was found murdered in our school courtyard. Before her body was found, the students were gathered in the auditorium for the Monday morning assembly. After hearing a few words from the headmistress, a video made by the senior class was to be played to officially welcome new students. Instead of the light-hearted greeting the students were prepared for, the video that played was of what looked like a sculpture. The camera zoomed out and panned around the peak before it was eventually made clear that the footage had been recorded on school grounds. The sculpture was of a girl dressed in the school's uniform holding a rose. Her head faced the ground, so nobody could not see her face at the angles the camera was pointing. The audience fell silent as the video ended with the title screen Cinema September 22, 2014, followed by the text Please gather in the courtyard. Despite the odd nature of the video, the students remained calm and filed out of the auditorium in an orderly fashion. As they gathered in the courtyard, they were greeted by the sculpt. You're from the video. The only difference, however, was that up close, it was clear this was not a sculpture at all. Hushed whispers turned to cries of terror when a teacher inspected the statue ND to confirm that it was the body of 16-year-old Ivy Litton. Litton murder was kept out of the news for some time since the initial cause of death was blood loss from cuts on her wrists. However, her body had been put through the process of plastination, a process used to turn biological specimens into plastic, using a technology where water and fat are replaced with polymers, leading investigators to suspect foul play. All leads sadly turned up dead ends, and Ivy's killer, now referred to as Cinema, was never brought to justice. Throughout the year, female students from different schools also succumbed to the same fate as Ivy. In every case, the victims' wrists were slit, and their bodies were turned into horribly macabre pieces of art. On November 6th of that year, Catherine Keswick, the daughter of the school's wealthiest family, supposedly had an encounter with Cinema and Liv tell the story. It was like a dream. Keswick aunts read calmly when interviewed, "We go through life thinking that nothing like this can ever happen to us, and when it does, it's nearly impossible to process even days later." When asked about what happened, the 16-year-old had this to say: "One moment I was having a conversation with one of my friends outside of the auditorium, and the next I woke up tied to a chair. In what looked like a dimly lit cellar, I was approached by a figure in a black coat and gloves wearing an ornate Venetian mask. They appeared to be male, but I could not make out their age due to the leg thing. The last thing I remember was being shown a slide show of all the other victims. It was like looking through an artist's portfolio. If I didn't know the true nature of the images, I would have found them to be breathtakingly beautiful. After the last slide had passed, everything went black. The next morning, I woke up in a hospital bed. Students were questioned in weeks following Kesik's encounter, including fellow sophomore Asher Evans. Evans found the unconscious girl outside of the school and immediately called an ambulance. Authorities say that the boy accompanied her to the hospital and stayed with her through most of the night. When questioned, Evans said that he, like many of the other students, had a feeling Kesik was next. Catherine, his apprentice Evans, stated she's beautiful, smart, and kind. Not to mention she comes from one of the most respected families in our social circle. Given the victims this maniac has claimed as far, it's not surprising that she would be next on the list. Families began to join authorities in attempting to not only provide relief for those affected, but also aid in the search for enema. The only similarity between the victims was that they were all high school females with wealthy and influential backgrounds. 3 months after Kesik's kidnapping, the nature of the crimes began to change. While the murders were fewer and more spread out, the victims were displayed in more complex poses with additional elements added. It was almost as if the murderer had got feedback on hair work and began to change certain things to appeal to their critics. Another theory was that cinema now had an accomplice. This speculation, however, was left out of most forms of media. To this day, cinema has yet to be caught. We still don't know their goals or motives, or even what age they might be. For all we know, they could have been a student at the school where this all began. After all, nobody really knows what goes on behind the gilded gates of the notoriously wealthy. Story 3. I Can't Wake Up. Though I've spiced up the narrative a bit, this is a mostly accurate account of what happens to me on a regular basis. Throughout my life, I've been diagnosed with various sleep disorders, the most common being insomnia. Some of the pills they give me to counter that end up with the opposite problem of me sleeping 15 hours a day, and one of the drugs gave me night terrors. In the end, I usually just take over-the-counter stuff to get to sleep. I just take a lot more than I should. 4 or 5 pills a night, it does the job, and I can still wake up and do things. Unfortunately, there's a 7 to 8 hour period where I am more or less incapable of waking up. My dreams have come to reflect this. This is one of those dreams. I'm in a room. It isn't particularly well lit, with only one all light in front of me. I look around. There's nothing in the room, save some cabinets and a chair. For some reason, I feel compelled to leave. When I do, I know I've made a mistake. I don't know why I feel that way. The hallway is unremarkable, with doors that presumably lead to rooms like mine, spaced consistently along the walls. I begin walking, looking for something. I don't know what, but I am looking. I get to the end of the hallway and see that it opens up into 2 more hallways leading to the left and right. I look down both. They seem to be the same. I choose the right. I get too. The end of that hallway, it splinters off into one direction. I keep following it until I see that this direction doesn't actually lead anywhere. I go back to the original hallway I was in and go left. Instead, suddenly it hits me. I'm in a maze. As soon as that realization hits me, I can hear something else. A high-pitched, shrill cry of some kind of an animal, its claws hitting the steel floor. Click-clack, click-clack. There's something here, something with me, a dangerous animal. Judging from the sound of its footsteps, it's walking, which means it doesn't know I am here yet. If I stay quiet, choose the way I go carefully, I may be able to get to the end of this maze without it even knowing I am here. I move faster, but I make sure my feet hit the ground as silently as possible, and it seems to be working. I get to another fork, but this one has 3 different directions, one going forward, 2 going to the left and right. Going forward is he's a trap. I think I go to the left. It isn't long before I see another fork. Click-clack, click-clack, click-clack. It's going faster. It may be able to smell me. I'll give it something to smell. Then I take off some of my clothes, quickly run down a corridor at dead end, and leave them there. It isn't a foolproof plan, but acts of desperation so rarely are. I track and keep moving. Click-clack. It's at a full gallop now. It knows I'm here. It's hunting me. I got to keep moving. With any luck it'll go after the fake scent. That should keep it confused for a bit. I hit a dead end. The sound is getting closer, but given that this a maze, it could be coming right down my hallway or in the hallway over. I'm not taking the chance. I go to the nearest door, which I've ignored up until now for a reason I can't place, and try to open it. But it won't open. It's locked. I could force it, but that would make too much noise. I go to the next door. It's locked too. I look inside the glass window, and I'm shocked to see someone inside. "Hey," I whisper. "Hey, let me in." He person turns toward me. I know who he is. He's a friend of mine. "Hey, let me in." "It's Max," I whisper, this time a bit louder. "There's something out here, man." He looks at me, dead in the eyes, and turns around. I keep shaking the doorknob, but he doesn't turn to look at me. Again, "Hey," I say again, on the verge of tears. "Please, please let me in." And then it hits me. I haven't heard that thing's claws in a while. I turn around and see it. It's just been staring at me this whole time, waiting for me to notice it. It's some kind of reptile. It's the size of a person, standing at about -1 feet tall, from head to tail, probably about 9 feet long. It's thin, though. It's made to be fast on its feet. Not a single pound of muscle goes to waste. Its arms are long and bony, probably not very strong, but from the look of its claws, it doesn't have to be to get the job done. Its head is what scares me the most. It's about 1 foot long, and I can see teeth, long, thin, sharp, and numerous. But the worst part is easily its eyes, too. At the front of its head, dark yellow, with thin diamond-shaped iris, and they're both looking right at me. I turn and run. It waits for a second, and lets out a loud battle cry, a scream so high-pitched it'd hurt my ears if I had the time to care. Then it runs after me. I make a few quick turns. I happen to see it as I turn. It's going too fast to stop. it ends up sliding on the ground and running into a wall. If I keep making turns, I'll build up some distance. Of course, I find out the flaw in the P. Land as soon as it hit a dead end. It is a maze, after all. I turn and run back, figuring I can make it. I get back to an intersection. I find myself on the ground, sliding. I only have a few seconds just to glance over, but I know what happened. I ran right into the damn thing. It's on the ground. I pushed it into a wall, dazed it. I'm on the floor for a brief moment. Our eyes meet. I can get up faster than it can, but it doesn't focus on that. It takes a quick lunge at me. I manage to put my hand on its head, shove it into the ground using its momentum. In the process getting to my feet, I make a break in the opposite direction, make a few turns, praying I don't find a dead end. I hear another of its battle cries. It isn't as loud or as high-pitched. It sounds almost indifferent. No, it sounds almost sarcastic. I happen to glance down, and I see why when it lunged at me. One of its claws slashed my arm. I'm bleeding. I'm leaving a trail for it to follow. It doesn't even have to run anymore. It just has to wait until I find myself in a dead end. But I run anyway. There's something that tells me there's an end to this haze. If I find it, I'm safe. I keep moving, keep making turns, but inevitably it happens. I hit a dead end. I turn around to see it, just barely moving at a jog. It sees me and practically smiles at me. It knows I'm dead. So do I fight it off as best I can, hitting it, trying to wrestle it to the ground so maybe I can run away again. But it slashes at me with its claws so many times that a few of my limbs don't even work anymore. It bites me, pulls things out of me, and all the while I'm thinking, God, this is familiar. Finally, it hits me. I had dreams like this. I have dreams like this. I'm having this dream. Normally, I'd wake up, but suddenly I find myself back at the beginning of the maze, inside that room. But I know it's a dream, a reoccurring dream I've had since I saw Jurassic Park as a kid. I'm told that most people, when they realize they're in a dream, they wake up. And I can tell that's what my mind wants. I'm fully conscious. I have all my memories. I can remember what I had to eat for dinner that night. I can remember taking my sleeping pills. I can remember what was doing shortly before I decided to go to bed. But I can't wake up. I am trying to get control of my real body. If I concentrate really hard, I can feel my arms and legs against the sheets. I can feel my eyes, they're closed, and I'm doing my best to open them. The feeling is like pushing against a wall. You push harder and harder, but it never budges. I'm trapped in that nightmare, and there's nothing I can do about it. So I figure, hey, if I can't Washington cab, maybe I don't need to. I'll just have a bit of fun until my alarm goes off. This is my dream, right? I can make it whatever I want to make it. Say hello to a couple hours of perverse sexual fantasies, except that's not how it works. Not for me, anyway. In the hundreds of times this has happened to me, I've never managed to change the dream to something more preferable. I've been trapped in a dream that wasn't a nightmare, which wasn't so bad. If a bit boring, I have to deal with this until I wake up. I stayed in the room for a bit. Time is different in a dream. It felt like I stayed in that room, pacing back and forth for hours. In reality, it was probably a few minutes. Finally, I decide that I just have to play this game. I go down the maze. It's different tea. Hon, it was before I think I get halfway into it, and I hear that raptor coming for me. I get to thinking, maybe if I'm not afraid of it, it won't be able to hurt me. That didn't work. Maybe it's because it's hard not to be afraid of something that's eating you and tearing you apart. Or maybe my subconscious just really hates me. In either case, I found myself back at the beginning, like I respawned at a checkpoint in a video game. I did the maze about 50 times, each time ending in a rather painful failure. I actually tried to fight the raptor a few times, closest I ever got to hurting at Washington, jabbing its eye out once. But finally it happened. My alarm goes off. I wake up. It takes me a while to shake off the dream, the sheer terror of what happened. But I put it behind me. It's a Wednesday, a school day. I'm junior in high school, and I've got shit to do. I get in my car, drive to school, buy some breakfast from Burger King on the way, while listening to my best of Aerosmith's CD. I get to school. I have to park all the way in the back of the parking lot and walk half a mile. I talked to some of my friends over the morning announcements, and I'm late to first per. My teacher dogs me for not doing my homework, but I blow her off. She starts the class. It's government, and we're going over the judiciary branch. The feeling creeps up on me. Slowly, I happen to glance at the clock. It says it's 4:30, but I just figure it's off or busted. But then I had this feeling that I've been here before. I opened some of my stuff to find there are no words in any of my books. Then it hits me. I graduated high school years ago. The car I drove in on, I sold it last year. I lost that CD too. And those friends I talked to before I haven't seen them and I don't know how long. One of them is dead. I'm still dreaming. And I'm going to keep dreaming until my alarm goes off. And there isn't anything I see and do about it. Story 4. The last tale of a grandmother. I'm old. Right now, I'm 81 years old, and had to ask my granddaughter for help to write this down. You see, I have a confession before I go. My name is Alma, and I had a sister named Elizabeth, or Lisa for short, having been born only 1 year apart. We were really close and looked very alike. One could say we were fraternal twins. Lisa and I had always been the best of friends. We shared everything. We slept together in the same bedroom until our early adulthood. And every night we would cheerfully tell each other about our day. For the first 20 years of my life. Lisa was my whole world when she was 21. My sister moved from home because she got married. I started working as a first-grade teacher, but our worlds expanded. But our friendship remained unaffected. She chose a house close to our parents, so we could still talk and see each other nearly every day. We shared all our secrets to each other. That's why I know how much Lisa and her husband, Dylan, loved each other. They were soulmates, a match truly made in heaven. Back then, men were way more violent and sexist than they are today, but not Dylan. Dylan was a sensitive man, gentle, respectful, and very good to my sister. One could think I would be jealous of them. But I was tremendously happy for her. I was feeling pretty good about my own life, too. I loved being a teacher, and I had a lot of other friends and interests. Besides, I was still living with Mom and Dad to save money, and buy my own house with depending on a husband, an old dream of mine. Lisa and Dylan lived an absolutely perfect marital life for 2 years. He would waltz her through the kitchen when he got home and thank Lisa for choosing him and being such an angel. When Lisa was 23, she got pregnant. It was the cherry on top of their irreproachable happiness. Lisa had always wished to be a mother, and it was such a good fit for her. She was so patient and kind. I was sure that all her kids would be as nice as their parents. By the time she was 30, she was already the mother of 3 beautiful, chubby kids. She couldn't be happier, and I couldn't be happier for her. Besides, I was where I wanted to be in my life, too. I don't want to say we grew apart, but we certainly were busier with our lives. I traveled the world, learned 6 languages, and was even a bit of an intellectual. We started a tradition to go apple picking every year, using identical dresses. It was funny and silly because we were 2 adult ladies, but we didn't care. We loved funny and silly. The year was 1966. Lisa was 30 and I was 29, and Dylan stayed home with the 3 kids as usual. I still remember him telling us to have fun, that he would make sloppy joes for him and the 2 bigger kids, ages 6 and 3, and our mother would help with the baby. We were the only ones in the field of plat trees that day. It struck me as odd, but I was too excited to catch up with my sister. After 20 minutes or so, Lisa started to shake and sweat. Lisa, are you okay? It's been happening for a few weeks now. Maybe it's some complication after my last pregnancy. When we get back, I will schedule a doctor for you, I said. But just a few seconds after, a darkness darker than anything came from both nowhere and everywhere, and it enveloped her. She screamed, but it was so fast that she sounded muffled and distant. The darkness retreated to the natural shadows of the trees, and I couldn't identify it anymore, no matter how desperately I searched the whole field. This was followed by an obscene wet noise of chomping. The dark thing, was eating my sister alive in less than a minute. Nothing of the sweet person I loved more than anything remained in this world. Nothing but the precious apples she had picked in a basket. I was traumatized, overwhelmed, devastated. I don't even have words for what I felt, but I knew what I had to do. So I gathered the apples, drove home crying, and cut my hair. From that moment on, I was Elizabeth, asterisk, 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 asterisk. I knew what the consequences were for me. My career and personal goals were over. I was now mother of 3, and married to a good man I respected, but obviously didn't love. But I had to do it for them. The kids can't grow without their mother. Dylan would languish without Lisa. She was his whole world. She was the kid's whole world. Hell, she still was kinda my whole world. Lisa just shone brighter. You couldn't even feel jealous, because she would welcome everyone in her light. I looked up to her every minute of my life. We had 2 other siblings, and I cared for them a great deal. But she was my beloved sister, more beloved than anything. I would be less missed. People would suffer less. Giving up my life was a price I was willing to pay, so people wouldn't have to go through the horrible loss of Lisa. Even though I had already bought my own house, I instinctively drove to my parents'. I guess it still felt like home while I was cutting my hair in our old bedroom. Between sobs, my father showed up at the door. Emma, did something happen? The way I looked at him was enough for an understanding beyond woe. Our DS, is Lisa gone? I lightly nodded. I'm taking her place. Please don't tell anyone. People won't miss me as much. He hugged me. Honey, what you're doing is beautiful. I love you both so much. I'm so sorry I never told you that people in our family, well, they disappear. We are haunted by something I don't even understand. It seems like a dark and powerful force. When it comes for someone, it's impossible to survive. He was crying too. I wish I could protect you girls. I really do. Baby, I can't. It's okay, Dad. It's okay. What else could I say after that? Life went on. I told the police I saw a shadow taking my sister, and they obviously interpreted it as someone stealthy kidnapping her. The search went on for months, but without a clue, it eventually stopped. The missing person posters started to disappear from the streets, replaced by new lost people or advertising of some sort. Emma started to fade from existence. A year later, my parents held a symbolic funeral. Since no body was ever found, I mourned for a long time, and Dylan was nothing but comprehensive. I made an effort to learn to love this man. I obviously loved my nieces and nephew, but I never thought of myself as the motherly type. So I had to learn that as well. I think I did a real good job being Elizabeth. I eventually started to love Dylan. I birthed 2 kids, and I loved my sister's kids as much as I loved my own. I missed my house and my teaching job, but otherwise I was able to fit in my new life. My father took my secret to the grave. When my mother was on her deathbed, I confessed what happened, but other than that, no one ever knew who I really was. I raised 5 children, and all of them turned out at least all right. They gave me 12 grandchildren, and I even have great-grandchildren. Dylan died 5 years ago. I never told him. His life was too happy for him to find out it was built in a lie. I'm now telling this story to my family and to the world because after Dylan and I are gone, it won't matter anymore. Lately, I've been sweating and shaking every day, and a feeling of doom and heaviness started to talk over me. It can be just because I'm old, but I don't think that's the case. Story 5. My daughter is dying. Tina was a good baby. Ever since she was born, other mothers watched us with envious, longing faces. She was so quiet and peaceful. She was a good sleeper and didn't mind being put in the crib. Most nights, I could make it only waking up to feed her once. The dream of every mother and every babysitter. She didn't mind being around other people and never cried for me when I wasn't around. Potty training her went smoothly. Tina was the most easygoing baby, toddler, and little girl I have ever met. I would add that she's also super smart and beautiful, but every mother thinks their children are. I think it's our brain deceiving us so we don't be like, 9 months, and a lot of stitches for that. I'd better throw it in the garbage can. Well, I would trade all of it to have a healthy daughter. I wouldn't mind one bit if she was a hysterical child, covered in snot and dew, able to poop by herself. It started suddenly as silent. Tragedies usually do. I was at work when her kindergarten teacher called me. She talked in a calm, almost singing-song tone. The only one grow. Women who spend the whole day around little kids know. Hi, Mrs. Davis. How are you doing?" After a pause for exchanging pleasantries, the teacher spoke again. "Look, Tina is being. She really good as usual, but today she's a bit under the weather. We checked and she has a fever. Could you come pick her up now? I left in a hurry. When I got there, Tina could barely stand. I carried her in my arms to the car. Unsure if I should take her to the hospital or just put her into bed with an antipyretic. Tina never got sick before. I sigh, wishing I had some help, wishing her father hasn't. T left, I was so in love with him. My mother lived in another town, but I decided to call her for advice. She told me to let Tina rest for today and take her to the hospital. Tomorrow, if she didn't get better. Pretty obvious if you're not feeling overwhelmed and tired. As I drove, I started thinking about Ben. He was handsome and a sweet talker, 10 years old. Other than me, I thought we were madly in love when he asked me to have a child with him. I was silly enough to think it was the biggest commitment a couple can make. I felt honored and blessed until he had a job offer in Japan and decided for me that I wouldn't be happy there. I assured Ben I would be happy anywhere with him. He said I couldn't leave my job, which I didn't like. He that much, or my mother, who I didn't see often anyway, and in just 1 week, he was gone forever. When Tina and I got home, I made us some tea, prepared a bath, and put my daughter in her bed. I had a bad feeling about this, but I dismissed it as classic mother paranoia. I slept by Tina's side in a tiny bed that night. I couldn't wait until morning to take her to the hospital. She woke up sweaty, shivering, and with an ugly cough. Her lungs made a weird static noise. Time for some serious antibiotics, I said to calm myself. As we got there, Tina had to be immediately intubated. She could barely breathe by herself. She was so small and fragile between the machines that kept her alive. In the next few days, things just got worse. Her hair was rapidly falling, hundreds of strands. At a time, her skin was so dry and sunken in the bone that she looked 1,000 years old. Her eyes got milky and blind. Her voice was all raspy, and her breath smelled awful. The doctors had no clue what was going on. We called specialists in infectiology from other states, other countries even. No one knew a thing, and a huge effort was made just to keep her alive the way she was. With no improvement, I still had to work, so my mother came to stay with Tina at the hospital. I spent all my days crying in my desk and researching rare diseases. I posted a plea on my Facebook wall. If you know what my daughter has, please tell me. I'm desperate. I wrote and described all her symptoms. A woman I didn't know or had in my friend list reached out to me. Her name was Jennifer, and we had no mutual friends. Samara, I can't even imagine what you're going through. I need to talk about your daughter and her father, and it's real. Why important? Can you please meet me at coffee shop near a subway station? I immediately answered yes, and we met on the same day. I had no time to think this was some scam. My guess was that she was some old friend of Ben and knew he had a disease. I was full of hope. Jennifer was in her middle 30s, a little older than me. She was tall, pretty, and looked friendly. She was already there when I arrived and bought me a cappuccino. Look, Samara, you don't have to believe me. I know it's crazy, but I know what your daughter has. Will you give it a chance and listen, T? Oh me, I will listen to anything. I'm desperate. I'm Ben's ex-wife, I know. You probably hate me and think I want to harm your daughter, but I'm fucking serious. That man is a psychopath. Did he leave you when you got pregnant? Yes and no. I don't think you are a bad person. Well, I had to put a fucking gun in his head to get this confession. The son of a bitch made a deal with the devil. He wanted to be attractive for longer and promised his firstborn in exchange. What? I screamed. We were the only clients there. The young barista quickly looked at me, then probably remembered people scream all the time in front of him and didn't mind us much. Jennifer gave me some much-needed time to let that sink in. So you guys didn't, huh? The kid? I asked too casually. Oh, I had a kid. Ben thought my son was his, but joke's on him. He wasn't. He started to get desperate. He begged me to have another child with him. Said he would take care of everything. And I wouldn't even miss it. A son or daughter of mine? What a monster, I mumbled. I obviously refused. I know it wasn't right to cheat on him and get pregnant. T was someone else's baby, but I had a gut feeling something was wrong. Before I got pregnant, he was too intense about it, and I knew he always hated kids. I knew something shady was going on, but couldn't a gene how big it was. I thought it was some inheritance matter. You know, I'm really glad I did it, but Ben was running out of time, so She hesitated for a long time, bit her lip, and looked at me with eyes full of pity. Well, he started looking for someone else to bear his child. Now the devil is claiming your daughter. We talked for a long time, and I'd say we became good friends. After a month, Tina got so much better and was out of the hospital in no time. She's back to her old, full of life self now. There's a tiny detail I'm forgetting to tell you. I took a trip to Osaka with my new bestie. We had a little talk with the man who tried to ruin our lives. Maybe we were a little too blunt, if you know what I mean. It was a real burst of emotions. And brains, my life is only getting better and better. I think Satan was pleased that I sent something that belonged to him. I heard he's really warm when it comes to welcoming his deadbeat debtors. Story 6. Dark Redemption. It was around 9:45 p.m. Loud, heavy winds blowing hard as if it could rip trees from the ground like a bored child with paper. A snowstorm had hit the small, hazy town that is located in the country of England, probably the biggest one they had in years. Aidan Mills was walking home after the long, dreadful day at his underpaying job. He was a handsome man, probably in his mid-20s. He was tall, just for being a lad, over 6 feet. His skin almost a pinkish color of blush, as his eyes were a dark, unnatural silver, yet everyone didn't seem to take notice. His hair was a mess, dark brown and all curled up, a coat of unwashed shiny grease covering it, him not being able to afford much such as soap and other needed things. Aidan wasn't much of a man, more like one of those average, overly happy-looking people you'd see in those old cheesy movies or cartoons. The only problem with him is that he wasn't happy at all. He had been suffering from extreme anxiety and depression most of his life, from multiple events that had happened, his mother committing suicide after she didn't want to keep Aidan at birth, the town folks shunning her for that choice, most of people being Christian and Catholic, His father left and abandoned Aidan for another family when he had found him doing unknown kinds of drugs and other distinct herbs. He did it as a stress reliever, yet his father wouldn't put up with it, so he left Aidan when he was only 15. Dark circles were round his dull silver eyes for the lack of sleep he gets. He seemed so unhealthy that his rib cage was easy to see from not eating on many auctions in the week. When he walks into this small town for work, it's like everyone knows everyone, being almost a small village with a few shops and restaurants. Aidan was the odd one out of 200 or more others. The way he'd act, or just the way he hardly comes out from his old run-down house. When he'd go out to work, townsfolk would always ask how he is doing or if he needed anything. Him being, well, trying to be a polite person, would reply with a simple, quick yes, I am, or just a nod, and other day, as he'd just reply with a twitch and crack of the neck, like some sort of sensation came over him for a split second. Not even being able to mutter words, he would just look at them and walk away. He whines grew stronger as Aidan made his way through the white freezing hell, finally making it up to his doorstep, fiddling with a cold bundle of keys before the door gets thrown open from the hard wind. As, stepping inside, Aidan slammed the door shut swiftly. The house he lived in is what you'd expect from a man like him. Dark peeling green paint on the walls, the cracks in the plank would allowing harsh winds to break through, making the place so cold. Flickering lights would always go out and come back on a torn mattress in a small room over to the side with clothes covering the floor. A torn brown leather couch in what seems to be a living area. Taking off his coat, Aidan rushed to the kitchen table, grabbing a white pill bottle that had the word antidepressants writ in on it with what seems to be a Sharpie marker. Opening the bottle with his shivering hands, he allowed the white gritted cap to fall on the floor as he tips the pills out from the bottle onto his hand, popping 3 into his mouth and swallowing, not bothering to drink it down with water. The sound of him coughing mixed with the winter winds echoed throughout his house, giving him goosebumps. Don slips his light jacket off with his black and silver-striped scarf, walking to his bedroom, flopping himself down onto the creaky, torn mattress, and sigh. When he turned his head to the bedside, there was a small framed picture of his father and mother. Breaking into tears, Aidan took the picture and threw it at the wall, glass of the frame shattering all over the wooden floor. Stuffing his face into the pillow, he began to cry himself to sleep. Before everything went black, he soon woke hearing intense banging on the front door of the house. It was dark outside still. Aidan not bothering looking at the time, he got up and stumbled over to the door, mumbling, yeah, I'm coming. Gripping the cold, rusty bronze handle, he creaks the door open, a heavy gust of wind and snow blowing in, forcing the door wide open on its own. When Aidan looked, he saw a young girl in her early 20s from the looks of it. She was shivering, her fingers a dark purple and her skin a pale frozen white. All she had on was snow-covered jeans and a sweater. She had to hold on to the side of the doorway to keep herself standing. All she could mutter was a weak help before collapsing onto the floor with a loud thud. With his quick thinking, Aidan picked the girl up off the cold, frozen ground and brought her inside. Taking her to his bedroom, he put her down on his bed and quickly covered her up in ripped but warm wool blankets. Aidan was able to get a closer look at the sleeping beauty. She had dark chocolate-brown hair that flows down past her hips and a small, agile bow. Her cheeks a dark red from the cold. Soon time passes, the young girl opening her sapphire eyes that shine from the dimly lit gasoline-powered hurricane lamp that was beside her. She looked around before sitting up, confused at where she might be. Not remembering much, she got up, her limbs feeling stiff and weak like she hasn't moved in decades. Noticing a note on the bedside table written in messy handwriting, she grabs it and reads, "Meet me out in kitchen." The note says ... with a small sigh. That is exactly what she does. Taking small steps on the cold, creaky floor, she makes her way out of the room to the kitchen. There was Adon, rocking in his seat, fiddling with a small white bottle, supposedly for pills. Adon then notices the confused and shocked girl in front of him. "Oh, hello," he quickly says. The girl looked bug-eyed at Adon before speaking quietly. Where am I?" she asks with a pathetic stutter, glancing at the tall lad, then and him, at the overflowing sink of dishes and messy countertop of pill bottles and other objects. "You were at my doorstep, caught in that horrid storm. I did my best to help. I surely hope you done. Mind," he explains like he had practiced what to say. Out of habit, Adon placed his hand on the back of his neck with an awkward look to him. The girl sighs as a moment of sense went by, feeling like forever for the both of them. Then the girl broke it with, "My name is Jill," and Adon, staying quiet, being caught off guard. Soon she repeated herself from Adon just being quiet as he shook his head, and then replied, "Oh, name's Adon," he said, putting a hand out to her. "It's a pleasure to meet you," he says as she shook his hand lightly. "Likewise," she replied with a small smile. Out of both their surprise they began to talk, Adon making some tea for the both of them. It has been a while since he had ever socialized with someone like this before, and it made him feel good. He felt just calm, like all his worries had just vanished. Then a week passes, and just like that their relationship has set off. Surprisingly, Jill seemed happy with Adon, and same goes to him. Adon's depression and anxiety had almost went away, Jill being there when he needs someone most, which helps him a lot. Couple months pass, and they were still together, the month being August. Now they would sit outside and just relax with each other, and everyone noticed how Adon seemed more lively now. Jill had helped Adon get a better job, so now he is getting enough for them both. Soon a year passes, and Jill is finally moved in with Adon, and they're planning on buying a new house in the old run-down cabin they are in. Everything was still going good for Adon, like us. Dream came true after all. If he was honest, it seemed to go to be true. He was even planning on asking Jill if she'd be his wife, using almost all of his money up on a gold diamond ring. Once again, everything just seemed so perfect, but things soon started to go downhill. Jill would hardly ever hug or kiss Adon anymore, and always call him a weak baby or something of that sort when he'd cry from some panic attack. When she wasn't around, he went back to doing drugs and other stuff. He then got fired from his job for not having proper work informa. Anti-health, and his disorders were coming back, seeming worse than the last time. He doesn't understand why he puts up with it. It just comes naturally to him. He assumes everything was happy. He just wanted it to stay like that. But everyone needs to wake up from a dream at some point. he was still determined to ask Jill to be his wonderful wife. Putting all this bad stuff that has been happening aside, he repeats the same things in his mind, these positive lies, as he waited and waited for Jill to return home from wherever she had gone to. Looking at the time, he noticed that I was late. Where was she? Shouldn't she had been home by now? He tries not to think about it, and with a small sad sigh he went to bed, expecting to wake up in the morning to see Jill in bed beside him. But that wasn't the case. Aidan got woke up by what sounds like Jill and some other male person laughing in the living room. He slowly got up and went out to see what was happening and stopped dead in his tracks to Jill, the love of his life, kissing one of the wealthier men in town. Jill, not realizing Aidan was home from being fired from work, gasped and got up quickly. "Aidan, I didn't think you'd be home," Jill squeals out. Aidan was just shocked at all of this. Jill was wearing a fancy blue dress to match her eyes, with gems and jewels dawning on her. This wealthier man obviously treating and spoiling Jill. "Get out of my house," Aidan mumbles, holding the tears back that were swelling up in his eyes. Jill walked over and gently gave him a kiss of pity, just to be slapped across the fact he by Aidan and him throwing the wedding ring he was gonna give Jill into her face. She held her cheek before she walked to her new lover. The man then kissed Jill, and they walked out of the house, closing the door behind. Aidan couldn't handle it anymore. His chest hurts as a sinking feeling just surrounds him, as thoughts and feelings of depression and anxiety flood his mind. He cries, feeling completely heartbroken of what just happened, and that's what sent him over the edge. He went out back, his breathing heavily, shaky, his hands feeling shaky and cold as he grabbed a long bund lev rope. Going back inside, he went to his room, not even making a sound anymore, not one peep. He took a chair and stood on it as he tried the rope up and around his neck. Everything just felt slow, like the whole world just stopped for a minute. Aidan heard his own neck back and break when he stepped off the chair. This breathless feeling swelling over him as this burning feeling of sadness and rage came over his dying body. And then, about 2 months pass, everyone wanting to forget about what happened the 2 months prior. The whole town seemed different now after that had happened, yet no one understood what happened with Jill. The authorities had went into her house after no one seeing her for quite some time, and what they found was shocking. Covering the walls was the words "You lied to me," painted messily in dark, dry crimson blood, with Jill's pocket prop up. Her eyes completely torn out, her neck sliced open, and a clean slit going down from her chest to her pelvis, with organs cleanly ripped out and all over the floor. It was absolutely sickening. To this day, everyone still wants to forget about those incidents, just classifying it as some kind of legend or horror story, but those people still know the truth, and that truth will always haunt them for the rest of their lives. Story 7. I am the one. I've thought about telling this story for quite a while now, and first and foremost I want to inform you from the very beginning that everything I am about to write is true. I will not be adding anything for the sake of the story, nor will I be using stupid stereotypical buzzwords to make this seem more terrifying. All I'll be doing is telling the truth. That's all I want to do. So I'll start from the beginning, and give a little background. When I was a kid, I began realizing I had a little insight on what was going to happen before it did. Now, by that I mean I sometimes knew what some kid in the class would say next, whilst bothering the teacher, or I knew when the phone was going to ring, that sort of thing. I didn't think much of it as a sweet 10 or 11-year-old. I just saw it as pretty cool, I guess. Then came on the feelings of I've been here before. Whenever I went new places, I could never remember one though. I began getting déjà vu regularly, which would last maybe 10 or 15 minutes. I'd Swally sit back and quietly mouth everything everyone was saying. As I got older, I began referring to it as a sensitivity I had. It wasn't until I was about 14 I realized I also had this sensitivity to spirits. I live in Ireland, so during the famous Celtic tiger my parents would all out on a beautiful 150-year-old house. I mean knocking down sections, rebuilding, re-roofing, repainting, everything. We got to pick our own rooms. I chose the attic. It was terrifying at first, but once we rebuilt it a bit, painted it, refloored it, and all that good stuff at Kit, pretty fantastic. The only part of the room that still bothered me was the small hatch in the ceiling up into a small boiler room. Just looking at it gave me a bad feeling from the beginning, so I had placed my wardrobe under it and put stuffed animals on top to cover it up so I wouldn't have to see it. The first night in that room was quite intense. All through the night I heard scratches and banging coming from the boiler room. I put it down to being new house noises, until I heard footsteps run across the ceiling over and over again. This happened every night. I remember mentioning it to my father. He laughed and said, unless there's a 4-feet-tall person living up there, you're not hearing anything, followed by the famous, you're probably just dreaming. I wasn't. This did freak me out a lot, but surprisingly I just got used to it and ignored it. I began noticing strange things happening in my room, little things. My wardrobe doors would be open. I'd close and go downstairs, come back up, and they'd be open again. Probably just a slant in the floor, my father concluded. Ornaments around my room would be in different positions, that sort of thing. Then came the feeling of being watched very carefully. For every second I spent in that room, I could feel someone or something's eyes burning into me. It was uncomfortable, to say the least, but I tried to get on with things. It wasn't long until I began getting night terrors. I saw horrible things I would not like to ever see again. However, the fact they were dreams made it less traumatizing, albeit slightly disturbing. My mother told me she would hear wails in the middle of the night. She'd get out of bed to find me standing outside my door, screeching and crying. She'd ask me what's wrong, but I'd simply shake my head and lower my chin to my chest. I don't remember any of the crying. When I was told I was doing this, I was pretty freaked out. Something like that had never ever happened to me before. I began feeling a bit down being in that house, specifically my bedroom. Each night I'd find myself thinking about how sad I was, which again was odd for me because I had never had any problems. I was always a happy kid. However, it was to get worse. I'll never forget the night it all went downhill. It was just a regular night, I guess, and I had gone to bed and fallen asleep. I woke suddenly in the middle of the night. Within a second of waking up, I was overcome with terror and dread. I felt something watching me again, only this time I saw it ISL. Hallie turned my head to the left of me, and there I saw it, a dark black figure staring at me. Its head was cocked forward from its body looking down at me. I thought I was dreaming, so I sat up, blinked, and rubbed my eyes. No such luck. It was still there, only it looked as shocked as I was. It jolted back perhaps when it realized I could see it, and slithered down the side of my bed, acros, as the bottom of my bed, as disappeared into the darkness. I couldn't do anything, only sit there in terror and weep quietly. I had never been so scared. I stayed on the couch for a few days oft, and avoided my bedroom completely. I changed after that night. I couldn't eat and I couldn't sleep. I couldn't do anything. I was just a terrified mess. It wasn't long before I decided enough was enough and braved the room once again, due to sheer exhaustion. I managed to fall asleep on my bed for what felt like 5 minutes before waking abruptly. It was there again, only this time its face was directly opposite mine. This time, though it was in broad daylight, as I had only managed sleep at about 6 a.m. I think it's fair to say I shat my pants. Some time passed, and I'm not sure how thinking back on it, but I did manage to brush all this off, and I did continue to stay in that room. It was quiet for a while, but before long I began waking with cuts on my body, ices in my skin, mostly on my back and shoulder blades. Each night as I tried to sleep I felt some invisible force clasp my neck. It got harder to breathe each night. I became very depressed, finding myself sitting awake at all hours, knowing I was being watched and contemplating just ending my life. That bedroom became a pit of despair. My father was and still is to this day very skeptical of me and my stories. My mother not so much. She got frightened by what had been happening and insisted we call the parish priest. Typically Irish, I know. Although I'm not religious, in any way, I sort reached the stage of fuck it, I'll try anything, so I went ahead with it. The priest called over. He read whatever it is they read in situations like these. Sploss. Had holy water everywhere and stuck a cross he got from the Vatican in Rome up in the room. That wasn't enough for me. Since I wasn't religious, I felt it was hypocritical of me to believe that would work. So I just moved rooms. I'm still terrified of that attic and have only been in there for brief moments when I've had to be since. I just assumed the attic was haunted and left it at that. The new room was fine. I was more or less fine for about a year. Still slightly traumatized, might I add, and I thought that was it, until I moved into a new house for college, and it all started again. I moved towns for college and found a perfect house with some of my very good friends. I had hoped to put everything that happened in my hometown to rest. I was very optimistic about my fresh start. I moved to a really historic city, and the house I live in now is about 150 years old. The first night myself and my housemates stayed there, we were unsettled by scratching noises coming from the walls. We put it down to new house noises. I should have known better, right? And brushed it off. We ignored the nightly banging and scratching. One day I decided to bring it up due to something that I thought was a bit strange. I explained that I was in bed one night trying to sleep when I felt my body jerking slightly, as if something was pulling on my quilt. I expected them to laugh, but one of my housemates sat up and explained the strange experience he had only nights before. He said he was in his room trying to go asleep, and he had had his feet hanging over the end of the bed. He said he was just asleep when something grabbed onto his foot. He said he pulled his legs up to his chest and lay there for a while, pretty shaken. We all went a bit quiet then and just gazed around the house, getting more and more creeped out. It wasn't long before shit hit the fan in the house. At 6 a.m. every morning, I heard a light wailing coming from one corner in my bedroom, and every morning I put my head to the wall to listen. Every time I called my housemates to hear it, it stopped. Typically, I think they started to think I was going crazy. It took a long time before they heard it as well. I was pretty relieved when they said the words, "Yeah, I hear it," too, because I was beginning to question my sanity. There was then daily banging from the kitchen, switch just flicking on and off, and the likes. We kind of just laughed it off all the time. I knew something was up, though, when I saw a black figure again. I had been sitting on the couch and could see into the kitchen from the corner of my eye. I happened to catch a glimpse of it staring in at me. I looked over quickly. It was gone. I ignored it and decided not to say anything. I didn't get to far eked out, since I was kind of used to it at that point, I guess. But I lost it slightly when one of my housemates let something slip. We were all at a party, and one of my housemates turned to me and said something along the lines of, "Can you believe what our other housemate saw the other night?" I had no idea what he was talking about, so I confronted the other guy. He sighed and explained how he didn't want me to be scared and wasn't going to say anything, but went on to tell me how he saw a black figure in the bathroom. I wondered if it was the same black figure I saw. We were all very wary in the house from then on. Then came the night it all went downhill again. It was only me and my housemate who had seen the black figure. The other had returned home for the weekend. We were both in the living room working on college stuff when we heard a bang. We both stopped and looked at each other with that aw shit look. We knew it was starting again, only this time it was much more intense. There was banging coming from all sides of the house. It was like someone was quickly moving around the entire house, banging the walls and stomping on the floor. This went on for a few minutes as we sat there in terror. Then it stopped, and the banging continued from just one area of the house, my room. We were kind of in that stage of nervously laughing and looking around. I had been sitting on the couch, and my housemate was sitting opposite me on a beanbag. He was saying something to me when his face dropped. He went completely white and just stared beyond my shoulder. I asked him what was wrong. All he said was we needed to get out of that room now, and that I wasn't to sleep in my room tonight since the banging was still coming from there. I calmly asked him what did he see. He ignored me, just gathered our stuff, and began going into the other room. I stopped him and calmly asked again, "What did you see?" He was looking past me again and explained how he saw a black figure sliding across the wall directly behind me. We both left that room and locked ourselves into his. We just sat there for a while in silence. I began thinking about all the freaky shit that has gone on in my short lifespan. I began thinking about the significance of these black figures and began wondering if there was multiple black figures or if it was all the same one. the same blah, CK figure I woke up to that night years ago. That was when it dawned on me for the first time. Maybe I am the one who's haunted.